Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's news conference, where we'll be providing an update on Homicide 12 for 2022. Speaking today is Deputy Chief Myron Demkiw and Homicide Inspector Idsinga. Inspector, you may begin.
Thank you, Connie. Good afternoon. My name is Idsinga, and I am the inspector in charge of the Homicide Squad here in Toronto. Thank you for joining us today. Yesterday, shortly before 3 p.m., 18-year-old Jaheim Robinson was shot and killed in his school, David and Mary Thompson Collegiate. Earlier today, we were able to announce the arrest of a 14-year-old boy in relation to Jaheim's murder. It is alleged that after shooting Raheem, the 14-year-old boy attempted to shoot a second victim within the school. As a result, the 14-year-old boy has been charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. He appeared in court this morning at 1911 Eglinton Avenue East. We are working closely with the school, and as part of our investigation, we will continue to interview witnesses as well as review surveillance camera footage from the school and surrounding area. As always, we are asking anyone with information to come forward to police, either by contacting Homicide directly or anonymously through Crime Stoppers. I will now turn it over to Deputy Demkiw before taking any questions.
Thank you, Inspector. Good afternoon, everybody. While this investigation is in its early stages, there's little I can say about this case in particular. However, what I'm here to talk about has sadly become all too familiar: the number of youth involved in homicides and gun violence. This year alone, 1/3 of our homicides have involved victims or accused under the age of 20. 2 have involved accused persons under the age of 15 years. This fact is disturbing and demands that something must change. There is no rational explanation for why a 13, 14, or 15-year-old child should have access to illegal firearms, let alone feel compelled to use them. From a policing perspective, we have been looking closely at the data and have been doing in-depth analysis of all aspects of gun violence over the last several years. This work has led us to focus on several troubling factors. The average age of those involved in gun violence between 2015 and 2020 was 25 years of age. And in 2021, we saw that average drop to 20 years of age. We are also seeing a greater number of shots fired, with an almost 50% increase in shell casings found at scenes of shootings as compared to last year. Additionally, we have seen a 3-fold increase in higher capacity magazines, as well as an increase in the modification of firearms to fire bullets in rapid succession. As we mentioned already, it's been our experience that the majority of firearms we are seizing in this city are coming across the border from the United States. These factors pose 2 equally challenging opportunities for police and our partners. Specifically, how to keep firearms out of the hands of young people, and how do we prevent these young people from engaging in a lifestyle of guns, gangs, and drugs to begin with. While we are engaged with our law enforcement partners to address the proliferation of guns in our city, the root causes of gun violence are an issue with many layers of complexity, and as we've said many times, cannot be the sole responsibility of police. As such, the Toronto Police Service is fully engaged with the city's Safety O implementation plan, which includes the establishment of a Toronto office to prevent gun violence through engagement with appropriate partners, to work with the community to enhance coordination of gun violence prevention and intervention efforts, and better support for victims in communities affected by violence by enhancing the Community Crisis Response Program and community partnerships that provide trauma-informed, culturally responsive supports. In fact, I can confirm that the Community Crisis Response Program has already engaged in response to this neighborhood as a result of yesterday's incident. In response to yesterday's incident, we will have a greater police presence in this community by way of divisional assets supplemented by our public safety response team. From an investigative perspective, our homicide investigators will have access to whatever resources they need to see this case through to a successful conclusion. While this will offer little consolation to James' family and friends and to the school community at Dave and Mary Thompson, I want to provide some reassurance that the chief, the command team, and indeed the entire Toronto Police Service is deeply troubled by this case. The murder of a young person inside a school where kids should feel safe and secure is shocking to all of us, and the service will do whatever we can to address these issues. And with that, we'll take questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll now take questions. When you're called on, please unmute your mic at this time only, and please indicate who your question is for. So, Deputy Chief Myron Demkiw or Inspector Hank Idsinga. You'll have one question and a follow-up. Once you've asked your questions, you'll be muted again. So first, we're going to go to Austin Delaney from CTV News. Austin, do you have a question?
Hank, I do. It's for you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Austin. Yes, thank you.
Hank, we were told yesterday that it was a targeted shooting. Can you paint a picture of what happened in that school that day? It seems like a bit of an assassination. And what's the motive?
I'm not going to get into what led up to the shooting, Austin. Obviously, that has to be preserved for court purposes, and quite frankly, a lot of it is still under investigation. It's still fairly early on. I can tell you, when I was first updated with the murder information yesterday, it was described to me as an execution. I've seen the video which captures the murder, and that's exactly how I would describe it, with the suspect running up behind the victim and shooting him at point-blank range. So, and then attempt to do the same to a second victim.
Hank, as a follow-up, is the 14-year-old, is there any history of gun violence with him?
Obviously, I can't get into any history at all with the 14-year-old.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Lightfoot from CTV News. Scott, do you have a question?
I do, for the Deputy Chief. Deputy Chief, just wondering, given the numbers that you mentioned that show it's younger people involved in these shootings, and it's also younger people being the victims of these shootings, we're talking barely teenagers, how do you see TPS adjusting strategies for dealing with the issue of gun violence and the prevention of it when you're dealing with essentially children here?
Well, I think that's a great question, first of all, but I think it really highlights some of the important work that's going on as it relates to our community safety and well-being plan, which in Toronto is called SafeTO. And this plan is a plan that we are very much engaged with our city partners on, calls for a multi-sectoral response to gun and gang activity. And what that basically means is we need to bring all sectors together in a comprehensive, coordinated, and collaborative way so that we can address all aspects of gun and gang violence. Enforcement, which the police are certainly a part of, is one aspect. Prevention, intervention, which we also play a role in, as do many, many other stakeholders, needs to be done in a way that's coordinated and collaborative across multiple sectors, including the school board, housing, city resources, crisis response, and the like.
Do you have a follow-up, Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the SafeTO plan. It's a 10-year plan, but I mean, given the numbers that you mentioned and the fact that I think it's like 6 or 7 teenagers, people under the age of 18 have been charged in homicide cases this year alone. We're 40 days into the year. I mean, is a 10-year plan still realistic? One anti-gun advocate today said the city needs a 10-day plan. Is it not something that should be addressed sooner than over the next 10 years?
Well, let me be clear, and I appreciate the question because I think it bears clarification. That we are very much engaged with the city and have been for many months, if not years. Specifically to the implementation of SafeTO, of course, the 10-year plan is in the process of starting now. But last year, for example, and by way of example, we established an executive leadership group, which included multi-sector partners from the city that met to coordinate and collaborate on gun and gang issues. We also did a pilot of a localized response in some of our most impacted communities last year, where we really enhanced our ability to coordinate and collaborate across sectors in response to localized gun and gang activity. So to your point, this is not something that we just started. We've been involved in this for quite some time. The 10-year plan is what's being rolled out now as an ongoing effort, and it's certainly legislatively required under Community Safety and Wellbeing Act. But we've been at this for some time and have really pivoted and shifted in the last 12 months, recognizing the change in criminal activity and most importantly, the incredible impact it's having in the communities and the traumatic impact it has on families.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mark McAllister from City News. Mark, you can go ahead if you have a question.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up to the last question for the Deputy Chief. You've been at this for some time. Clearly, in recent months, to your points, it's not working to this point. So when can we expect to this start being curbed?
Well, listen, I can understand why this question is being asked. I think it's very difficult to quantify and qualify prevention activities. But what we definitely need to do is do a full court press on a multi-sectoral engagement. So yes, we've been iterating and developing our response as a collaborative across the sectors. But to your point, the work is far from done. In fact, we are just embarking on SafeTO formally. So while we have been developing our response over the course of the last year, there clearly is a lot more work that has to happen.
And do you have a follow-up, Mark?
I do. Thank you. For the inspector, if you would, can you tell us if there is any relationship or what kind of relationship? Clearly, if you're describing it as an execution, do you have a sense of how they knew each other?
Well, again, that might be moving into the whole area of motive. I don't think I would go any further than saying they were both students at that school.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mark Douglas from 680 News. Mark, do you have a question?
Yes, Connie, thank you. A question for the Deputy Chief. There was comment before about the lifestyle of guns and gangs. How prevalent is gang initiation in these uptaking cases that we're seeing with youth victims and youth suspects?
So listen, thank you for the question. As it relates to the prevalence of gang initiation, that's something we're very much mindful of and attuned to as we collect our evidence and our intelligence. I'm not going to speak to specific cases, but it is something we are aware of and pay great attention to. And when the information presents itself, it's something we definitely dive into and explore in great detail where possible.
Do you have a follow-up,
Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Again, for the Deputy Chief, you mentioned the guns coming up from the U.S., and I've always wanted to know just exactly how easy is it to get a gun from the United States up here to Canada? Can I just go down to a Walmart, buy 5, put them in my trunk, and just drive across the border?
Thank you for that question. Listen, the access to firearms in the United States certainly is different state by state, so it's hard to say in broad sweeping strokes. What we do know is obviously the access to firearms in the United States is far greater and less regulated as a general observation in the United States. But that really is a state by state issue as it relates to access to firearms, so very difficult to comment on broadly.
Next, we have Betsy Powell from The Star. Betsy, do you have a question?
Hi, good afternoon. Hank, you mentioned that the accused is a student. Well, can we assume that he was in the 9th grade?
I know the victim was in the 12th grade. Just guessing by the age of the accused, he would be in 9th or 10th grade. I believe 9th.
Okay, and he was arrested pretty quickly. Can you give us any details about that? How were you able to do that? You mentioned that also that the execution was caught on video. Was that did that lead you to him?
That certainly helped, and we had a lot of assistance from the staff and the students at the school early on in the investigation. And by the time we were starting to catch up to the accused, he was actually on his way into 41 Division to turn himself in. So he was arrested very close to the police station.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And can I have a follow-up with the Deputy Chief, please?
We'll come back to you, Betsy.
Okay.
Next up is Catherine McDonald from Global.
Good afternoon. This question is for Inspector Idsinga. Just following up on Betsy's question, you said that the 14-year-old was on his way into 41 Division. When did that happen?
I don't have the exact time of the arrest in front of me, Betsy, but it was within hours of the actual incident. Sorry, Catherine.
So it was last night at some point?
It was, yes.
And can you, just going back to the actual incident, was there any interaction at all between the accused and the victim or victims prior to the shooting?
That's a tough question. There was some interaction with them earlier, prior to the shooting, but not immediately before the shooting.
So is it fair to say maybe the accused went off, got the gun and came back and carried out the attack?
I don't think there was that much of a time gap between the interaction and the shooting.
Thank you for your questions. And Catherine, the arrest took place just before 7 p.m. Next up, we have Steve Ryan from CP24. Steve, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you very much, Connie. My question is for the deputy. We know that homicides go in ebbs and flows. There's no reason why you can have 6 on a weekend and then the next 5 weekends you have 0. Why, in your experience, do you think, and you've alluded to this in your opening remarks, Deputy, and I appreciate that, why is it, in your personal opinion, do you think we are seeing an uptick in youth crime? Just generally speaking, in social or whatever you can, I realize I'm asking you to read tea leaves, but why do you think this is occurring?
Well, listen, I really appreciate that question. It really speaks to the proliferation of illegal firearms that's taking place on our streets. There's no question that there's an access to illegal firearms issue in this city, particularly handguns, and the very troubling trend of younger and younger persons, and indeed, as we're speaking about today, children picking up illegal firearms and being prepared to use them. So proliferation of guns to the extent that is gang-driven, and certainly we do know there's broadly an issue around drugs and the trafficking of drugs as it relates to firearms violence in this city. So that's basically what we're dealing with, is that ongoing issue with access to guns by criminals.
Thank you for the answer. And my last question is for the inspector. It's a quite simple, Inspector. I believe I read that the second occurrence, the second shooting, the gun jammed, something to that effect. Can you confirm that and speak on that at all?
I can't. We haven't recovered the firearm yet. We're hoping to, and I may be able to answer that question down the road, but at this point in time, I simply don't know why the firearm did not function.
Thanks,
Okay,
Steve.
thank you for that.
And we'll go back to Betsy before we conclude this news conference. Betsy, do you want to go with your final question?
Sure, thanks so much. Deputy Chief, do you want on the question of the troubling trend of children having guns, can you speak to whether there's an attitude that maybe your investigators hear from some of the kids that they're talking to who have guns, that they feel emboldened to carry them because of perception that they'll get off lightly?
Thank you for that. I think the answer is a lot more complicated than that, frankly, and it speaks to some of the questions earlier. Getting to the root causes and identifying solutions is a complicated thing, and it's a complicated bit of work that involves many, many stakeholders coming together. So as to why a child would feel emboldened to pick up a gun, I think the root causes of what causes that is not answered in a one-dimensional sentence or one linear answer. We know there are multiple reasons, social and other, on why we have these circumstances existing, and I think the underlying root causes, the complexities around them, is where the answer lies on why children are picking up illegal firearms and being prepared to use them.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. That concludes today's news conference.